and gets that deserter status confirmed, all that. So they kick him out. They send him packing. Well, it's right after that, August of 88, he claims that he met a woman named Mary, who was a Mexican immigrant worker, and says they had sex. And then he claims he woke up with her dead body beside him, but he doesn't really give any details about how he killed her.
So he's sleep killing.
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. And then he buried her in a field. But none of that's been confirmed. They've never found her body.
Oh.
They don't know of this missing person. So.
Okay.
Yeah, but he claims that this is his second victim.
Why in the hell would... Okay. He's crazy.
And this happened in New York. So a few weeks later, he leaves New York, goes to Philadelphia. He gets arrested for vagrancy, gets put in jail. I mean, the guy just keeps getting in trouble, right? Then he takes his wife, his kid, and they move to South Carolina. And at that time, splits up with his wife. They have an argument about drugs.
I can't believe she stayed this long.
I know. So she's like, she's tired of the drugs, all that. And so they have this big fight. And she kicks him out, which would be probably a normal reaction for most women, right? So he moves back to Candler and becomes a cashier. And he lives only about a mile, I guess, from his mom's house. And there he starts dating a woman named Sandra Davis. And then he enrolls in this 3-month training program for truck driving at Alliance Truck Driving Center. And he thought if he got this good job, maybe as a truck driver, he had stability, he was making pretty decent money, he could decrease his drug intake, all that he could win his wife back.
Oh.
So he really wants to, get his wife back.
Okay. So he's trying to straighten up a little bit.
Yeah.
Not kill people.
So then he gets back together with his wife and meets another woman, starts dating her. And so while he's dating this other woman, her name is Bronya Owenby, he starts seeing his wife again on the side, and then he starts dating a 19-year-old. So he's juggling, several ladies at once. Then he breaks up with Owenby, he gets dumped by the other girl, starts dating the other girl's sister. Yeah.
These are all great choices.
Yeah. Well, then he becomes a qualified truck driver and gets a job and, trying to get back with the wife all the while. And then he is telling his brother or stepbrother, this guy Eric, about all the sex he's been having in his truck. He's just hooking up with all these chicks. Then he claims during that time that he killed a guy named Ronnie that he picked up one night, and that he woke up in Tennessee and had this dead body in his truck and had to dump it somewhere in the forest.
Sleep killing again?
Yeah.
This dude.
Moves back in with his mom. I mean, he's just a hot mess.
They're like, I don't know what you're going to do with all those dead bodies you're trying to bring back up in my house, Eugene.
Yeah. Well, then he found out that his wife was pregnant with their second child. And so he's still trying to,
so she's
be part of that.
Fucking his crazy ass.
Yeah. So by this time, we're into 1989, he happens to come across this lady named Velma Faye Gray. She's a white female, she's 42, and she wrecked her car. And he happens to come by, sees this lady in distress, offers to help, picks her up. Once he gets her in the car, he beats her to death, then he chokes her, and, dumps the body. And this is at Lake Bowen, which is down in Spartanburg. And a body eventually is found by a fisherman, and that's in 1989. And eventually there's a reward offered for information on this lady's death, and, it keeps going up from $3,000, eventually $5,000, and so, they're looking for this killer. But I guess at this time they haven't tied the first murder of the lady, the Patsy Vineyard, to this murder yet.
Right.
So these are the only two that they've been able to confirm, but he's claiming that there have been others. Because there was Mary, and then there was this guy Ronnie, that he's just sleep killing, I guess. Well, remember I mentioned the lady, Elizabeth Hurley?
Yeah.
So Jamie Hurley, she's 39, and they bump into each other. She ends up giving her number to Lesley. I guess she remembered him from when he was younger in that juvenile detention center or whatever. So they kind of reunite, whatever, exchange phone numbers. So during this time, I mean, he's still, seeing all these different ladies, got all this other love drama going on, moves in with his half-brother. He ends up buying this car. He hangs handcuffs on the mirror, thinking that was like really cool. It's going to get him
or functional.
Some ladies, I guess.
Yeah, he can cuff them up and take them off and kill them.
So he, keeps thinking about this juvie counselor that gave him the phone number, and eventually calls her up, and she's found dead later.
He calls up, he's like, hey, it's Eugene, how you doing? She's like, oh, hey, Eugene. He's like, oh, what are you doing later? She's like, well, I don't know, what do you want to do? He's like, yeah, can I kill you later?
Murder.
You want to get murdered later?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, you gonna tear this thing up, Eugene? He's like, oh, no, girl, I'm gonna kill you. And she's like, you gonna kill this thing, Eugene?
Oh, my God.
He's like, I'm going to end your life.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, pick me up at 8.
So this is in 1990, and so he calls her up, and he claims that they, stayed up all night doing cocaine, partying together, and then he decides to strangle her.
Oh, so he's awake for this one.
He puts her in a stranglehold, baby. So, So after all of this has happened, this is May the 24th, 1990, he strangles this woman. The next day, his brother Laren asks him to go for a drive after work. Now, the whole time that he's hanging out with his brother, he's thinking about Jamie's body, and he starts feeling kind of remorseful about what he's done. So he makes his brother, drop him off so that he can go bury this body.
That's interesting that he shows regret and remorse, honestly.
So he even left a marker on her grave where he buried her so he could go back and find it later, because he's feeling pretty bad about all this. But not so bad that he can't go enjoy a nice picnic with his family.
And stop killing
the
people.
Next day. So 2 days after he strangled this woman, he's having a picnic with his wife and kids and family and just living it up. And it's on this day that Hurley's father, reports her missing. So people are starting to notice, hey, she's not around. What's going on? And eventually he is taken into question a couple of days later for, Hurley's disappearance. And, I guess they figure out that he's met up with her, phone calls, all that. So he's questioned, and they search his van. They find her purse, Hurley's purse. They bring him in for another interview. He eventually took police to the side of the road where he dumped some of the belongings from her purse. And then he's placed under arrest for some outstanding warrant that he had for a failure to produce a car title, and also for the larceny of Hurley's pocketbook. Because they don't have a body, they think, oh, maybe he just stole her shit.
Right. Or it also could be, let's hold him on these other charges as long as we can while we, get this thing going.
So, you gotta remember, this is May, late May 1990. And so, June the 6th, his grandfather bails him out of jail. And so, the day he gets bailed out, he takes his wife and kids for a walk up the mountain where he's buried Hurley's body. And during that time, he points out the burial site and confesses everything to his wife.
Well, this hiking trip just took a strange turn, Dad.
Yeah. Well, his mother eventually is going to phone the police and say, he's been linked to the Vineyard case back in 1987. So I guess he, has confessed that he was part of that. So the family's starting to put the pieces together that, hey, we've got a problem here with Lesley.
See that over there, kids? That's a wild turkey. Well, see that over there? That's a shallow grave where I put my last victim.
Well, weeks after his family's ratting him out, he goes to the courthouse. He gets a brand new ID with his picture, but with the name Brian Allen Collins, which is his brother-in-law. And then he steals this black Kawasaki motorcycle and swaps tags with another bike. And so then he, just goes out on the road, I guess thinking he's going to, skip town and get away with this stuff. Now remember, he's out on bail and all that, right? So he left out, and I guess he went looking for a friend, gets a hotel, gets drunk, can't drive. There's an officer that picks him up, gives him a ride back to the hotel, and, he's just chilling out Well, then he bumps into Katherine Johnson. Now, she's 21, and they spend the night drinking. They are in this hotel. They go out driving to some deserted soccer field. They have consensual sex. This is what I don't get. They check into a hotel, and then they leave to go have sex in a soccer field.
Maybe I just want to do the voyeur outside thing, exhibitionist.
Yeah, I'm like, is that your kink? I'm not kink shaming, but whatever.
Maybe like star sex.
I just feel like, why would you spend the money? Like, save the $39.99.
That's true. I mean? Go get $39.99 worth of liquors.
Oh, I was thinking like chicken nuggets.
Drugs. Or shovels and duct tape.
So they have the sex, and then Warren chokes her to death, puts her body in the car, and then takes it back to the hotel, parks it. So during this time, like, police issue this really dramatic, like, news release about this suspected serial killer. They name Lesley Warren, and his brother leads police to the body. So because he's told his wife this is where I buried her, whatever. So all this is all coming out. So he eventually, has his brother take the police there. They guard it overnight. They start digging it up. I mean, it's like a big scene. So eventually, they find Jamie Hurley, and they serve Warren with a warrant. They handcuff him, take him to the station, and he admits to choking Vineyard, Gray, Hurley, and this Katherine Johnson. And he says that he's killed up to 8 people, maybe.
I was going to say we're up to 4 or 5, kind of that we know of.
Yeah.
Right?
So, his mom goes to trial telling everybody about, he had this detachment from this very early age.
Yeah.
He claims during the trial he's had frequent blackouts, memory loss.
Right.
Eventually, he's extradited down to South Carolina for killing Gray in the Spartanburg area. They do psychological testing on him, and they say that he is totally sane, so he can't use that insanity defense, even though they're trying to build this case of like, oh, well, he's been in and out of therapy and had all this childhood trauma. And
he even admitted to beating up a couple of guys' dicks with his face.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's true.
Dylan, you gotta stop chiming in on this stuff.
He's crazy.
He's eventually, brought to trial for the murder of Gray. Then he's found guilty for that murder, Velma Gray. And then he pleads guilty in North Carolina to the murder of Jamie Hurley. And he's given the death sentence. And of course he appeals that. So we're getting into like the late 90s. So, this is like some years later. Appeals that. Eventually the U.S. Supreme Court upholds his death sentence. And so we have 4 confirmed victims. He's claiming 8 victims. And, he's killing New York, North Carolina, South Carolina. And if he's a trucker and he's on the road, I mean, honestly, there could have been even more than 8 people.
There's no telling.
But, most serial killers want to brag or kind of exaggerate the number and the victims and
it's
what
true.
They've done.
Their legend, their lore.
Exactly. So, I mean, if he's saying there's 8, then it really could be 4. What is that rule about the people you've slept with? You take that number and divide it by 2 or something?
I haven't heard that rule.
Oh, well, never mind.
No,
so I'm just thinking maybe that applies to serial killers too. Like, you take the number of people that you've killed and then you multiply that by 2. To get your claim. I don't know. So yeah, he's in prison, death row, and just chilling there, I guess.
He's still there.
Yeah, all these years later.
Wow, you gotta love it.
Mhm.
You gotta love it. Kept up by taxpayer money after killing all those people.
But he's got some of the traits of a lot of these serial killers. I mean, he's had multiple jobs, fired from multiple jobs, all over the place. He's done some trucking, but he's done a lot of odd jobs. He's often fired due to drugs and that kind of thing.
Kind of couldn't keep the army thing going.
Long statuses of being unemployed. I mean, he's, got these relationships, I guess, with all these different women, but living this very transient kind of lifestyle. Like, one minute he's hanging out and living at his mom's, and then he'll go live with like a brother or girlfriend, then goes back to his mom's house. I mean, it's just sort of like, he doesn't have a lot of stability in his life.
It's kind of interesting though. Like I said earlier, he was